Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever you are tuning in. Thank you so much for joining me today for my third installment of a series of talks that I'm offering on the topic of compassion. Now, if you haven't seen the first two sessions, don't worry. You don't have had to have seen those to receive benefit from today's talk. These talks are all standalone. And of course, because the theme is running throughout the 4 weeks, they do support each other. And in fact, today I'll be answering a few questions that I received around last week's talk, but I'll frame it in such a way that it can be accessible to people who are just joining today for the first time. So, why am I doing a series on compassion on Facebook and Instagram? Well, the reason for this series is a lead up into an 8-week online meditation program that I'm offering. And so I'll just do a little bit of an announcement around that program, and then we'll do a bit of a guided meditation, and then I'll offer the talk around compassion and joy. So the 8-week online meditation program, it's called Kuan Yin, a retreat into compassion. Kuan Yin is the personification of the quality of compassion in the Buddhist tradition. Kuan Yin it can be seen as being quite similar to Mother Mary, if you're Catholic or Christian. So they hold a kind of a similar place very often in those traditions, the embodiment of compassion. So the retreat runs for 8 weeks. It launches on Wednesday, February 23rd, and it runs until Sunday, April 10th. And this is all, the times that I'll be presenting here are East Coast times, unless otherwise specified. So Section A, there are 2 sections. Section A meets on Wednesdays and Sundays from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. East Coast time. Now that will change. I think about the 3rd or 4th week into the program, there's daylight saving, so the clocks change. And so it moves to 9 to 11 p.m. if you're in the East Coast. The clocks here in Thailand don't change year round. And so if you're here in Thailand, the times of Section A of this retreat are Thursdays and Mondays from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Section B, this is offered with Great Britain time, and because Section B is really designed to cater to people in Europe and Great Britain, the UK. So Section B is offered on Thursdays and Mondays, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Great Britain time, which is Thursdays and Mondays, 3 to 5 p.m. here in Thailand. And if you have questions about the times, please feel free to message me. I'm happy to answer any questions if you're uncertain about where you land, what time zone, and so forth. Happy to work that out for you. So we meet twice a week for 8 weeks. The retreat sessions will include a variety of guided meditations offered by myself. It'll also have an abundance of question and answer time, because oftentimes these practices can bring up experiences that we're not familiar with. And so it really helps to have an experienced teacher and experienced guide to help sort all of that out. The sessions also include interactive discussions with the other retreat participants and one-on-one sessions with myself as well throughout the course. I make myself completely available to the retreat participants throughout the course. I find that's really helpful, and it can be very supportive. Everything I offer, the Kuan Yin retreat, I'm also offering a retreat on change starting in March, embracing change and impermanence. one-to-one sessions, these Facebook and Instagram sessions, everything that I do, I offer within a secular voice. So there's no particular religion being preached or pushed or requested that anyone join. You can get great benefit from these teachings from any religion, any walk of life. It really doesn't matter. And everything is held within a trauma sensitive framework. I've done quite a bit of training and been certified in advanced trauma sensitive mindfulness, and I really hold the container of the retreat within that trauma sensitive framework. Kind of related to that, the numbers of each section are kept quite low. There's a maximum of 15 participants per section. So space is limited. In fact, section 1 is almost full already. Section 2 is about half full, so there's still some space there. And it's really nice. We get kind of a cohort vibe, kind of a family vibe, because there's only 15 of us. We get to know each other, and it becomes quite a supportive and interactive experience for everyone involved. So if you find that 8 weeks is a bit of a chunk of time, maybe too much time to commit to, you're afraid you might miss a few sessions or half of the sessions, that's fine. You can miss as much sessions as you need to, or you can attend to as many of the live sessions as you're comfortable with. Everything is recorded, and those recordings are made available only to the retreat participants as a way of holding that confidentiality agreement. That's so important for us to feel comfortable sharing freely. So only the retreat participants will receive copies of the video. So if you need to miss all of the sessions and do the whole thing at your own pace, you're welcome to do that. If you have to miss half the sessions or a few sessions, also fine. If you can make them all live, that's great too. So it's really as you feel comfortable. So I've spoken enough about the retreat. If there are any other questions about that, please do feel free to message me and or go visit my website, suchsweetthunder.org. And you can register directly through the website, or you can email me with any questions there through the website as well. So I'd like to offer just a brief guided meditation here. This will be maybe about 5 to 10 minutes, just as a way of kind of settling into the present moment. So I'll ring the bell and I'll guide us in. And so the invitation here is just to arrive into this present moment. And there are many ways of arriving into the experience of the present moment. And for this brief meditation, let's just notice the sounds of the present moment. And so the invitation here is just to listen. You might ask yourself, well, what does this present moment sound like? You might notice quiet sounds or loud sounds. There might be sounds generated by nature, such as bird songs, crickets, the sound of rain on the rooftop, wind in the trees. There might be a dog barking or a conversation unfolding nearby. Or there might be sounds of appliances, the hum of a refrigerator or a heating unit or an air conditioner, the whirl of a fan. Perhaps a car or a motorbike passing by in the distance, an airplane passing overhead. Regardless of the quality of sound or the origin of sound, just noticing the soundtrack unfolding. You might notice how sounds require no effort to be heard, to be known. The sounds simply arise, and they're heard, and then they fade. Perhaps noticing there how the sounds interact with a backdrop of silence. And if your environment is particularly quiet, you might simply notice the sound of silence that's there. And so while we're here resting, if you notice you get distracted by thoughts, just know that that's normal. And you might label the thoughts with the word thinking, which can help the thoughts dissolve, and you can gently return back to the present moment, listening to the sounds, the silence. Listening to the universe orchestrate the soundtrack of the present moment. And so while we're here resting, listening to the sounds, the invitation then is to bring awareness to the feet, perhaps noticing the feet against the ground or the floor or the carpet. Or if you're wearing socks, you might feel the socks against the skin of the feet. And inviting the muscles in the feet to grow soft and relax. You might also notice sensations of clothing against the legs, inviting the muscles in the legs to unwind, rest. Perhaps noticing the weight of the body against the cushion or chair or mat. Inviting the muscles underneath those sensations to grow soft, relax. You might also notice sensations of clothing against the back, inviting the muscles in the back to relax, rest. Perhaps noticing the hands resting against the body or touching each other. The arms resting against the body. Inviting the hands and arms to grow soft, unwind. You might also notice sensations of clothing against the shoulders, inviting the muscles in the shoulders to rest. Perhaps noticing sensations arising through the back of the neck and the sides of the neck. Inviting the muscles in the neck to unwind, relax. You might also notice sensations arising throughout the cheeks of the face. Letting any tension or stress that's held in the face go. And perhaps noticing sensations arising from the top of the head. So taking a few moments here, resting, noticing the sounds, the silence, sensations arising throughout the body. And if you wish, then taking a nice, nourishing, deep breath here. Noticing how the breath moves through the body as you inhale and exhale. The rising and falling of the abdomen. The expanding and contracting of the rib cage with each breath. You might notice how the shoulders rise and fall as you inhale and exhale. The back moving out on the in-breath and in on the out-breath. Perhaps noticing how the temperature changes from cooler to warmer at the nose and the back of the throat as you breathe in and breathe out. And again, if you should find yourself distracted by thoughts, that's totally normal. Smilingly recognize the distraction, letting it go. And gently returning back to the breath, the body, sound and silence. And so while we're here resting with this present moment experience, the invitation here is to bring into awareness, either by memory or recollection, something you feel grateful for. This could also be something in the present moment experience, like gratitude or feeling grateful for the comfort of the chair that you're in or the support of the cushion. Gratitude for the comfort of the clothing you're wearing. The safety of the four walls around you. If there's a pet or a loved one nearby, you might feel gratitude for the connection between yourself and the pet or the loved one. Or perhaps you met with a friend recently and just feeling gratitude for the connection there, the company. If you shared a laugh. Perhaps you had a nice meal recently, feeling gratitude for the meal. Just picking something that's quite accessible to feel gratitude for. And really bringing this up in the mind's eye, you could visualize this person or experience, pet. And while holding this image in the mind's eye, feeling into the felt experience of gratitude. What does it feel like in the body, in the mind, in the heart, to feel grateful? Or you might ask yourself the question, how do I know I feel grateful for this experience or person? Where is that information arriving? Perhaps when you think of this person or pet or experience, you just wish to smile. That's fine, just feeling that. Perhaps gratitude arises as a softening around the heart, or in the abdomen, or in the shoulders. Perhaps you get an overall full body experience of warmth or a vibration, a smiling energy. And so the invitation here is to hold the felt experience of gratitude and to really go into that experience as much as possible. Much in the same way you might go into a warm tub of water, or a swimming pool, or the ocean. Really submerging yourself into the felt experience of gratitude. Allowing the warmth, the smiling energy of gratitude to soak in through the surface of the skin, drenching the tendons and muscles, and soaking all the way into the marrow of the bones, that warmth, that golden, smiling energy of gratitude. This might feel very subtle, that's fine, mild, or it could feel quite large and intense. Just noticing whatever's there for you as we submerge ourselves into the feeling of gratitude. And so just pausing there for another breath or two. And so in the next breath, we'll begin to shift away from the guided meditation and back into a conversational space. And I'll cue that by ringing the bell 3 times. Okay, well, thank you all for joining me in that guided meditation. These meditations tend to go a little longer than I estimate usually. Maybe I'm just enjoying the energy that's being generated here through the screen, so thank you for that. And if you wish to stay in that longer and explore that felt experience of gratitude, that can be very nourishing. If you wish to stay in that longer, press pause just at the end of the recording there, and you can stay in that as long as you wish. So I do have a topic planned for today. It's the topic of how joy and compassion relate and support each other. Although they might seem very contradictory at first glance, they are actually very, very similar. But before we get to that, I want to read a little bit of a poem, and then I would like to answer a couple of questions that I received around compassion. So the poem that I'm going to read here is from an 8th century Tibetan monk. Actually, I guess he would have been in India, sorry. He would have been in India, an Indian monk from the Buddhist tradition. And he wrote what's known as the Bodhisattva's Guide to the Way of Life. It's a very, very standard text. It's one of those highly revered texts in the Buddhist tradition. And it's like a tomb. It's very, very large. It's huge. And so I won't read all of that. I'll spare you that and myself. But I just have a small poem here from Shantideva that really, really speaks to compassion in a very deep and profound way. May I become at all time, both now and forever, a protector for those without protection, a guide for those who have lost their way, a ship for those with oceans to cross, a bridge for those with rivers to cross. May I become a sanctuary for those in danger, a lamp for those without a light, a place of refuge for those who lack shelter, and a servant to all in need. For as long as space endures and as long as living beings remain, until then may I too exist to dispel the suffering of the world. For as long as space endures, for as long as living beings remain, until then may I too exist to dispel the misery and suffering of the world. Wow. That's the whole thing, really. I love it. May I be a bridge for those with rivers to cross. May I be a protector for those without protection. And so this move of compassion is a move to serve the present moment. We survey the scene, and in that surveying, if we can keep ourselves from falling into reactivity, we can survey the scene with wisdom, with clarity. We know what's needed. We're not concerned with what we need to feel better or to feel comfortable in that present moment. But we serve what's the present moment needs. And we can practice this in a very simple way, although Shantideva really sets the bar very high here, which I love. It's so beautiful. But, I think we all kind of do this sometimes when we see a friend or a loved one or even a stranger struggling with something. Something simple like, getting a top off of a tightly held container, right? They're struggling and wincing. They can't get the top off. And we might just grab it from them and like knock it on the counter and pop the top off, right? Did we offer that help because we felt uncomfortable watching them struggle? Or did we offer that help because they were struggling? Now, the end result might be the same, but the motivation, the intention behind that action is completely different. When we move forward to alleviate our own discomfort, that's not compassion. That's not compassion for that person anyway. It might be some sort of compassion for ourselves. But we're not really serving what the present moment is requiring. We're serving what we require to feel better. So these practices of compassion are an invitation to first recognize our reactivity. And in that recognition, we can start to, put that aside. And that's quite challenging because compassion asks us to be near the suffering and the struggle of the present moment. And so when we're near struggle, when we're near suffering, very often, at least I think in my experience, it's quite easy to fall into a reactive pattern. Right? We don't want to feel that. We don't want to feel how our heart trembles in the face of that suffering. So we numb out. We look for the quick fix. Or we start to blame other people for the situation. We get angry. Or we fall into despair. These are all reactive patterns that disengage us from that experience, that keep us from feeling exactly what's there, that keep us from serving the scene with clarity and wisdom. Okay. So I did want to answer a few questions here, and that kind of answered one of the questions that I got. But I just want to frame this Q&A session so that everyone can receive benefit from it in case you weren't here at the last couple of sessions. So the last session that I did last week, I read through 5 phrases of compassion that are traditionally used to meditate on. And in that process of holding these phrases in the heart, the light of compassion begins to shine. The heart starts to tremble in that frequency of compassion. And so the questions I got were around the phrases. So I'll just read through the phrases very quickly here. May I be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May I be free from disturbance and harm. May I accept things just as they are. That's the one I got the question about. May I experience the world accepting me just as I am. And may I serve whatever arises. And I got a few questions about those. The last 3 were really the ones that brought in questions. The piece about acceptance, and then serving whatever arises. And so part of the reason why I brought in that poem from Shantideva was that he's really talking about that aspect of compassion, where we're called to serve the present moment. Right? We take our own self-interest out of the mix. Then we move forward with that heart of kindness, with that heart of compassion, to hopefully to alleviate the struggle and the suffering of that present moment, whether it's ours or somebody else's. It doesn't matter at that point. It just becomes the suffering of the present moment. So hopefully that poem from Shantideva and that little talk that I gave around that poem answered that question. Compassion asks us to move forward to address the struggle of the present moment. So that's what the serve whatever arises. The whatever arises is referring to taking our own self-interest out of the situation and selflessly moving forward to alleviate the suffering and the struggle. And then, and this phrase often brings in a lot of questions and comments. May I accept things just as they are? And it's a tall order, isn't it? But what's the alternative? What's the alternative to accepting things just as they are? Well, the alternative to that is to resist, to deny, to struggle against things as they are. And that's fine. You're welcome to do that. But if you engage in that type of struggle, chances are you're only adding more suffering to the mix. When we accept things just as they are, even if they seem on the edge of unacceptable, we reclaim the energy that we would have used in that struggle. Right? If we're confronted with a situation that has a lot of pain, the natural tendency, and this is one of those reactive patterns I was referring to, is to resist that, to push it away. I don't want that. That's natural. That's the normal human experience. We're all wired to do that. It's habitual and it's reactive. And it requires a great amount of energy to keep that situation away from touching our heart. When we turn and accept things just as they are, initially that's going to be quite intense, perhaps, depending on the situation. But in that acceptance, again, we reclaim the energy that we were once using to push that situation down, to hold it away so it doesn't touch our heart. And as we reclaim that energy, we have an abundance of energy to then move forward to serve the present moment. If we're divided, if half of our energy is going into pushing something away, into that struggle, into the fight, then we're not going to be effective in serving the present moment. Oh, we might be able to do it for an hour or two, but if it requires our compassionate attention for days, weeks, months, years, no way. So this acceptance, may I accept things just as they are. In a sense, it's an ask, a request. May I be in this present moment free from my reactivity. So we're then able to hold the present moment in that open heart of compassion. So I hope that's helpful to those who sent in questions around that piece. I got another couple of questions about, well, then how can we, move forward for social justice and change if we simply accept things just as they are? Great question. So thank you for sending that in. This phrase, may I accept things just as they are, it's not condoning transgressions. It's not asking us to be passive. In fact, it's actually just the opposite of passivity. And so if we, turn on the news and we see something in our society, in our culture happening that we find appalling, distasteful, violent, causing suffering, we want to do something about it. That's great. That's beautiful. And if we're going to be effective at doing something about that situation, if we're going to be effective moving towards social change, we have to accept what's happening. Again, it's that same move forward to be able to marshal all of our energy so that we can be effective to move forward effectively for social change. Right? If I turn on the news and I see people doing things that I don't agree with, and I'm like, how could they do that? Oh, those, terrible people, whatever, and I get really upset and angry. My energy is going into that. That's not helpful at all. Now, that might be a natural, normal reaction, but then the idea is to let that go and reclaim that energy and muster as much energy as we can to move forward with change. And that requires accepting the situation. As long as we're struggling, as long as we're denying, as long as we're fighting, our energy is going in places it doesn't need to go. And if we're fighting, that's the worst. Because if we start fighting, if we make if we make an enemy out of the situation, that's how the fighting starts, right? And if we launch an attack, then they're going to launch a counterattack. When our movement forward comes out of anger or the energy of attacking, inevitably anger comes back and there's a retaliation. And we see this time and time again throughout the world, right? So that's the type of movement forward that comes from non-acceptance. That's the alternative that I was referring to. That's not helpful at all. So to turn and open our heart in compassion to the situation, say, yes, this is the human experience. This is what's happening right now. How can I help? How can I serve what's arising? Again, this is a tall order, right? It takes a brave heart to put down those defenses of reactivity and to open ourselves to the present moment in this way. And I've talked quite a bit, so I'm not going to have as much time to speak about joy as I would like to, but I'll try to touch on that as well next week. So because this compassionate heart requires an opening, requires this acceptance, in order for our heart to tremble in the face of suffering, we have to be in the face of suffering honestly and openly. And if we can, bring in the support of joy. Now, I know that sounds very, very counterintuitive here. So the idea is to practice practices of joy, not at the same time, not while we're, of course, in the face of suffering. That's a bit extreme. But just like the meditation that I opened today's session with, where we visualized an experience of gratitude, gratitude is a great resource for compassion and joy. They're very connected. And when I work with people on the retreats and on one-on-one, I usually ask people to keep a gratitude list. And I have a particular practice around a gratitude list that I can speak to just briefly here. And so I ask people to write down 3 things that they feel grateful for. And you write down the first thing. I feel grateful for the purring of my kitten. Right? That I do. That's one of the things I put on the list very often. And then you pause there and you take 3 breaths. And as you breathe in, you feel that gratitude. Really feel it in the body and in the heart. And as you exhale, you send it out through the body, through the legs, through the abdomen, through the lungs, the face, and so forth. You do the same thing again. You do that 3 times, breathing in the gratitude, sending it out through the body. Breathing in the gratitude, sending it out through the body. And then you do that 2 more times with 2 other items. So the whole practice might take 5-7 minutes at the most. If you do that every day, after about a week or 2, your connection to joy will be much stronger. You'll start to notice things in your life that are a little more, have a little more ability to gladden our heart. We'll feel that connection a little bit easier. And so right here, this practice of gratitude and joy, we see how that can support the heart of compassion. Right? Because if we're just really, dedicating our life to accepting things just as they are, to serving whatever arises, to holding ourself, our loved ones, and the world in compassion, that can be tiring. Joy is the nourishment which allows that to be possible. So another practice that I teach and that I offer on these retreats and that I do in my own practice is a practice that was created by the neuropsychologist Rick Hanson. Beautiful practice. It's called Taking in the Good. And it's similar to the gratitude practice where you notice something good in your present moment experience. And, my cat's sleeping on the bed right now, so I might notice her. She's so cute. She warms my heart. Right? So then I think, okay, that's the good experience. Let me breathe that in. I'll breathe it in, sending it through the body, the goodness of that, what that goodness feels like. Allowing that goodness to be completely felt throughout the body. And then a part of the taking in the good practice is to begin to amplify that, kind of turning up the volume on the somatic experience of goodness, as if we were turning up the volume on our favorite song on the radio. So we just turn it up a little bit and we kind of visualize or imagine or feel into that goodness getting a little bit louder, perhaps radiating out from the body a little bit. Then we turn it up a little bit louder so that it fills perhaps the entire room that we're sitting in. And so then it feels quite large. And then we can turn the volume up all the way so that that goodness flows out into the entire world, like that. And there's a tremendous amount of science around practices like this, both the gratitude practice and this taking in the good practice. So the larger we can get the somatic experience of goodness, of joy, of gratitude, the more neurons in our brain begin to fire and wire together. We're literally changing our brain if we can stay in that experience of gratitude, of joy for, they say, 3 to 5 breaths or longer. If we can stay in that amplified experience of joy, of gratitude, the larger the better. For 3 to 5 breaths or longer, the neurological pathways in our brain begin to fire and wire together for future experiences of joy, of happiness, of gratitude. And so when I offer meditations around that, we stay in there for about 5, 7, 10 minutes perhaps. So there's millions of neurons that are wiring together so that we can be more sensitive to the goodness around us, the goodness of our human experience. And so it's not positive, it's not toxic positivity, it's not positive thinking, but it's a way of restructuring our neurological pathways so that we see the world in a more balanced way. Because human beings have a negativity bias, right? We naturally focus on the dangers in our environment and our experience, the negatives in our environment and our experience. We had to be that way in order to survive for 20,000 plus years. As Homo sapiens, we had to be wired in that way. But we don't need to do that any longer, right? We don't live in the Serengeti any longer. We don't live in caves where we need to be hyper vigilant about danger. Yet we still have this nervous system that's kind of evolved as a product of that. So this practice of taking in the good slowly begins to offset the negativity bias that's inherent in the human experience, so that we can equally take in the positive and the negative. And in that way, these practices are a great, great support for our ability to be more compassionate, more loving, more kind, more joyful, and more equanimous. So I think that's all I've got to say today. We are just about out of time. Thank you all for joining me. I see all of your faces there on the Instagram and on Facebook. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. And if you're watching this back on video, I really do appreciate it. I wouldn't be here without an audience, obviously. So thank you for that. Also, if you are interested in signing up for the 8-week retreat on compassion, all of that information is on my website, suchsweetthunder.org. If the practice, the guided meditation that I just kind of walked us through here on taking in the good, if that's intriguing to you, please send me a message and I'll send you a few links to podcasts where I guide a practice of taking in the good. Okay, everyone. So I will be back next week at the same time doing another talk on compassion, although I'm not sure yet. And if there are any other questions or anything coming in, please do message those over. I'm happy to answer any questions that might come up live on the Facebook if you wish, or if that's uncomfortable for you, I'm happy to just have an email conversation, or we could connect live, whatever's best. Okay, I'll ring the bell and I'll close us out and we're done. Thank you all.